Beruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Tzadik Aleph Amud Beis. 10 lines from the top at the new Mishnah. After a series of Mishnayos teaching the various Shiurim from Meleches Hoitzah, our Mishnah goes back to the underlying principles of Hoitzah, that one needs to make a full Akira from one Rishus and make a Hanocha in another Rishus. Says the Mishnah, Hamoitzi oichalin v'nosnon ala iskupa. A person who takes out food and he places it on a skupa. And a skupa is the entrance way to the home, and that's designated as a karmelis. The reason being because we're talking about the situation where it's not, that it's above 3 tfachim, and it's at least 4 by 4 tfachim wide. Bein shechazer v'hoitzian, whether a person himself who took it out from the Rishus HaYachid and put it on this iskupa, he himself afterwards places it from the eskupa into the Rishus HaRabim. Bein shehoitzian acher potter, or whether it's somebody else who takes the item from the eskupa and places it from there to the Rishus HaRabim, it will be potter. Mipnei sheloi oso malachtoi bebas achas, because the malacha was not done bebas achas, all at once. In other words, in order to do a malacha, to be mechayif for malacha hoitzah, it has to be at one point altogether. A person takes from the Rishus HaYachid and places it in the Rishus HaRabim. And therefore over here, since he took it from the Rishus HaYachid and placed it in the Karmelis, it went from a Rishus HaYachid to a Karmelis, and then further it went from a Karmelis to a Rishus HaRabim, and therefore there was no malacha of hoitzah, a hanacha, and an akira and a hanacha from one Rishus, namely the Rishus HaYachid, to another Rishus, namely the Rishus HaRabim. The Mishnah continues, Kupa shehi malea peiros, if you have a basket filled with peiros, unesona al iskupa hachitzona. Here is a different type of iskupa. Here, this iskupa is not a karmelis, but rather it's a Rishus HaRabim. Because over here we're talking about that it's not gimel tfachim high. It's indeed going to be less than gimel tfachim high, and therefore it will then come together with the outer Rishus HaRabim, and therefore it has the same designation as a Rishus HaRabim. So a person takes the basket from the Rishus HaYachid and he places it in the Iskuba Chitzon, which is the Rishus HaRabim. Even though most of the peiros are situated outside in the Rishus HaRabim, potter, nonetheless the din is potter. As kol hakupa, until the entire kupa, the entire basket is in the Rishus HaRabim. Over here, since the entire amount of, the entire fruits, the entire peiros are not outside, only roiv of them are outside, therefore some mikzas are still considered to be inside. Until you have the entire transfer from one Rishus to another Rishus, if some is still left over in the original Rishus, it's not going to be a malacha of hoitzah or mechayiv, a korban chatos. Says the Gemara asking the following question, Hi iskupa mai. What is this iskupa in the reish that we were talking about? Ask the Gemara, Ilema iskupa Rishus HaRabim. If indeed it has the designation as a Rishus HaRabim, potter, would it be potter from a person to take from the Rishus HaYachid and place into the iskuba if it would be a Rishus HaRabim? How could that be potter? Hakamapik Rishus HaYachid Rishus HaRabim. He did a malacha of transferring from one Rishus to another Rishus. Ella iskupa Rishus HaYachid. Whether you want to say it's Rishus HaYachid instead, then we have a problem the other way. When he transferred from the Rishus, from the iskuba, calling it Rishus HaYachid, to the Rishus HaRabim, then it should be chayiv. Bein shechozer v'hoitzian, bein shehoitzian acher potter. Why does the Mishnah say whether he himself transfers it from the iskupa to the Rishus HaRabim, or somebody else takes it from the iskupa to the Rishus HaRabim? Why is it potter? Hakamapik Rishus HaYachid Rishus HaRabim. If indeed the iskupa has a designation of Rishus HaYachid, then he would be taken from Rishus HaYachid to the Rishus HaRabim. He should be chayiv a korban chatos. Ella iskupa karmelis. Rather, we must conclude that iskupa in the reisha is indeed a karmelis. V'ho kamash malan taimo denach bekarmelis. And we're coming to teach here in the Mishnah the following, that since it rested in the Karmelis in between from going from the Rishus HaYochid to the Rishus HaRabim, therefore it's going to be potter. Ha loy nach bekarmelis mechayev. But if it would not rest in the Karmelis, then it would be chayev. For example, a person would then take the object and walk from the Rishus HaYochid over the Iskupa into the Rishus HaRabim, he would be chayev. Says the Gemara, Masnisin Teloi Kebein Azai. This is not like the opinion of Ben Azai, because Ben Azai says that if a person, while he's walking, every step that he takes is considered to be then nach again. Whereby, according to Ben Azai, it's as if he stopped in the Karmelis, whereby he would not be chayiv. As follows: Detanya hamoitzi michanut leplatio. If a person goes from a store to the public plaza, derech stov, through the area where there are blocks that have a bunch of benches there, which is indeed a karmelis, chayiv. According to the Tanakama, he will be chayiv because he's just walking through the stov. However, Ben Azai potter. Ben Azai will say he's potter because when he's walking through the stov, it's as if he then was nach on the stov in the Karmelis, and then went again from the Karmelis to the Rishus HaRabim. So this Mishnah is not like the opinion of Ben Azai. The Gemara now quotes the next part of the Mishnah, Kupa Shehi Maleya, the basket that is full of peiros. Omar Chizkiya. Chizkiya then explains, Lo shanu ela bekupa maleya kishuim v'deluyin. Our Mishnah is talking about a basket that is filled with long vegetables, like zucchini and like gourds, that runs the entire length of the basket. Aval, and that's why indeed that if part of the gourds are still in Rishus HaYochid, obviously he's not going to be chayiv. Lo shanu ela, again, lo shanu ela bekup meleya kishum v'dilun. Aval meleya chardal chayiv. But if this basket was filled with seeds of mustard seeds, then each one is an individual, and therefore even if only a majority of the basket is in the Rishus HaRabim, since these seeds are many of them are completely in the Rishus HaRabim, then it will be indeed chayiv. Alma, says the Gemara, kisavar eged kli lo shmei eged. That connection of the kli to in this case, the Rishus HaYochid, since part of that kli still remains in Rishus HaYochid, obviously, according to Chizkiya, it's not considered to be a connection, and therefore it will be chayiv chatos when they are seeds inside of this basket. Rabbi Yochanan Omar afilu meleya chardal potter. Whereas Rabbi Yochanan argues and says even if it's filled with seeds, mustard seeds, and although there are individuals that will be completely in the Rishus HaRabim, but since the basket still partially remains in Rishus HaYochid, he will not be chayiv. He'll be potter. Alma kesavar eged kli shmei eged. Obviously, Rabbi Yochanan is of the opinion that the connection of the kli to the Rishus HaYochid remains a connection, and therefore there hasn't been a complete transfer from one Rishus to another Rishus until the entire basket is in the Rishus HaRabim. Says the Gemara weiter, Omar B'Zeir, Masnisin deloy bechizkiya deka. That our Mishnah is not meduyak like Reb Chizkiya. Udeloy Reb Yochanan deka. And also our Mishnah is not meduyak like Reb Yochanan. Ki Chizkiya lo deka diktani ad sheyoytzi es kol hakupa. Like Chizkiya, it's not meduyak because at the end of the Mishnah it says you're not going to be chayiv until the entire kupa is in the Rishus HaRabim. Taima de kol hakupa hal kol hapeiros potter. Mashma that only if the entire basket is in the Rishus HaRabim, even though the entire peiros might be in the Rishus HaRabim, but some of the basket is not, then it's going to be potter. Alma kisaver eged kli shmei eged. Obviously, according to this, then the Mishnah seems to ascribe to this requirement that if indeed it's connected to partially in the Rishus HaYochid, the basket in this case, then it will not be considered to be a transfer. It's still connected to Rishus HaYochid and has not now given allow the fruits that are now in the Reshus HaRabim to be considered to be a transfer because the basket is not completely in the Reshus HaRabim. Ki Rabbi Yochanan lo deiko, like Rabbi Yochanan is not meduyok, diktani afal pishel roiv peiros bachutz, because it teaches in the statement before in the Mishnah, until most of the peiros are outside. Taima de roiv peiros, only because most of the peiros are outside, have to be outside in order to be chayiv. Ha kol peiros avgada agida kupa migvai chayiv. But if the entire peiros were outside, even though there would be a connection because some of the part of the basket would be inside, it would be chayiv. So therefore, that's not like Rabbi Yochanan. Alma kisava eged kli lo shmei eged. Obviously, that the connection of the kli that is still inside is not considered to be a connection, because so long as you have all of the peiros that are outside, that would be a transfer. Ve'ela kasha. So we're left with a kasha on both opinions, both the opinion of Chizkiah as well as the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan. Explains the Gemara according to each one. Chizkiah metaretz l'tamei, Rabbi Yochanan metaretz l'tamei. Both Chizkiah explains according to his rationale, his reasoning, and Rabbi Yochanan can explain according to his reasoning as follows. Chizkiah metaretz l'tamei ad sheyoitzi es kol hakupa. According to Chizkiah, that which it says in the Mishnah, he's not going to be chayiv for the transferring until he transferred the entire kupa, the entire basket, means as follows. Bamed dvarim amurim bekupa meleya kishurim v'deluim. This is talking about when you have long fruit, in this case long vegetables like zucchini and gourds that run the entire length of the basket. Therefore, when the entire basket is not outside, then really not, and the entire vegetables are also not outside. Aval meleya chardal. But if the baskets were filled with seeds, with mustard seeds, then it would be as if the entire basket is indeed going to be outside, and it would be chayiv. Because then you have, like his shita is saying, that in this case, the seeds are completely outside, whereby it then completes a full transfer. Rabbi Yochanan metaretz l'tamei, afal pisha roiv peiros bachut, even though roiv peiros are outside, says the Mishnah, it means as follows. V'lo roiv peiros bilvad. It doesn't mean actually only rov. Ela afilu kol peiros potter. Even if the entire peiros are outside, is potter. Ad sheyotzes kol hakupa, until the basket entirely is outside. If the basket still has partial inside, then it's not a complete transferring, according to Rabbi Yochanan. Ask the Gemara the following question. Meisvei brings a brisa, hamoitzi kupas haroichlin, one who takes out into the Reshus HaRabim a kupas haroichlin, a box of peddlers that have different types of besamim inside of it, v'nosna ala skupa hachitzona, and placed it from the Reshus HaYachid onto this iskupa hachitzona, the Reshus HaRabim. Afal bisharoiv meaning bachutz, even though the majority of the meaning of these besamim are outside, potter, ad sheyoitzi as kol hakupa, until you take out the entire basket. And therefore, at this point we're saying, kosal kedai bitzrori, we're assuming over here, we're talking about where these are bundles of spices, and they're talking about ground spices. So even though the ground spices, some of them will already be entirely in the Reshus HaRabim, but since the kupa is not entirely in the Reshus HaRabim, therefore it's not considered to be a transfer, whereby kashya lechizkiah, kashya on Chizkiah's opinion. Because again, Chizkiah says, even though the kupa in this case is a little bit inside the Reshus HaRabim, but as long as the fruits, or in this case the spices, are entirely in the Reshus HaRabim, so therefore it will be a transfer. It doesn't make a difference that the kupa has a little bit still in the Reshus HaYachid. So therefore we're left with a kasha on Chizkiah, because over here it says that indeed that these ground up spices, which are entirely in the Reshus HaRabim, even though the kupa is partially in the Reshus HaYachid, is considered to be potter because of this kupa that still remains in the Reshus HaYachid. Answers the Gemara Amala Chizkiah, we're not talking about ground spices, but we're talking about spices that have long stems. and therefore these spices that still are intact with their long stems extend to the entire kupa. So therefore, if partial of the kupa is inside the Rishus HaYachid, then also these stems, partially of these spice stems, are also inside the Rishus HaYachid, whereby there hasn't been a transfer. Mosi Rabibi bar Abaye. The Gemara asks further from Rabibi bar Abaye as follows: Hagoynev kis b'Shabbos, a person who steals a pocketbook on Shabbos, chayiv shekvar nischayiv begeneva koydem sheyava lidei iser Shabbos. He's going to be chayiv for the geneva because he was chayiv when he did the hagrabah, when he picked up and made a kinyan on the pocketbook, before he took out the pocketbook from the Rishus HaYachid where it was situated. So he'll be chayiv for the geneva, he'll have to pay back that which he stole, and he'll also be chayiv for the transferring the malach of hoitzah. And if he did it b'mezid, then he'll be chayiv over here. He'll be chayiv, if there was warning, he'll be chayiv skila. However, in the second case, hayem megarer v'yoytzei potter. If he dragged this pocketbook out instead of picking it up, and he goes out, he's going to be potter from the theft, because here we have a concept called kamle b'derabamine. That means when you have a punishment of misa together with a smaller punishment, in this case of stealing, thereby he won't have the punishment of paying back the theft, because he'll have the bigger of the two punishments, which is in this case death. So therefore he'll be potter from the stealing. That's what it says here. Hayamegara v'yoytzei potter. If he would drag out the keys, that which he's stealing, and then he would only acquire it when he would be leaving the Rishus HaYachid, when he goes into the Rishus HaRabim. So simultaneously, when he then is going to steal, he'll also be chayiv for the transferring. So then we say, Kamle b'derabimine, Sharei Iser Geneva Iser Shabbos Boin Ke'echad, because they come simultaneously. Ask the Gemara, V'isal Kedaitach Ogad Kli Shmei Ogad, if you're going to say that the connection of the Kli that still remains in the Rishus HaYachid is still considered to be connected, and therefore there shouldn't be a malach of hoitzah, then Kodim le'Iser Geneva le'Iser Shabbos, then the Iser of Geneva precedes the Iser of Shabbos, because over here when he brings out and he drags out the keys towards the Rishus HaRabim, then he then has the access to these keys when he's now already partially out, when let's say the opening of the keys is now towards the Rishus HaRabim, he's considered to be having stole that keys, because he has access to the contents of the keys. Whereas when it comes to Shabbos, until he brings out the entire keys into the Rishus HaRabim, he will not be chayiv. So he should be chayiv for both the Geneva as well as for the hoitzah. And yet it says over here he's potter. So the Gemara says, Ida afke derech piv hochenami. If indeed he would be dragging this out with the mouth of the keys towards the Rishus HaRabim, then you're right, then he would have access to the contents. And therefore he'd be chayiv for Geneva before the chiv of hoitzah. But over here, b'mayaskinon, what are we talking about? The afki derech shulav, that he was taking it out from the bottom side of the keys. I asked the Gemara, va'ika makom chalmo, but you still have the makom of their tefira where the bottom side has, and therefore the iboy mafka le v'shokil. We're on top of Taf Tzadik Beis Amud Aleph, that if we then wanted to then tear open from the bottom, we can then have access to the contents of the keys. So therefore, Shuv, the Gemara is saying that you would be chayiv for the Geneva, which implies that we don't say that it's still, the object is still connected to the Rishus HaYachid, because here it says that he's potter. So it'd be a kasha, but it would be kasha on the Manda Omar, Rabbi Yochanan, who says that Ogid Kli Shmei Ogid. Answers the Gemara Benascha. We're talking about Benascha, that indeed there are large pieces of silver inside of this keys. It's not like we thought that there were just coins inside, but indeed there are bars of silver that run across the entire keys, whereby he can't just open it and then have access to take out the bars. The kivan the ika shnotzin, asked the Gemara further though, the kivan shni ika shnotzin, because there are strings that you can pull and open, mapik le ad pume, he can then take out from until the mouth of this keys, vishari, and open it, vishokil, and take out the contents, vishnotzin agidi migavoy, whereas the strings still will have partially been connected or still inside of the Rishus HaYachid. So again, now we have the following question, that in regards to the Geneva, there is a Geneva that precedes the Malach of Hoitzah. Because again, here we're seeing that the strings are indeed partially inside. Answers the Gemara, the lekesh shnotzin. We're talking about a situation where the keys does not have shnotzin, doesn't have these strings, and therefore they're not inside, whereby, like we said before, it's potter because it comes the same time, the Geneva as well as the Hoitzah. The Bois Eima, alternatively, you can say, the Islay, it does have the shnotzim, it does have the strings, but the reason why it's not a problem is because the shnotzim are not inside, they're not in the Rishus HaYachid, dragging behind, but rather mekarche ilave, they're wrapped around the keys itself, and therefore that's why it's potter, because simultaneously when the keys was drawn out, when it was moved out, then the same time that there was a theft was the Hoitzah of Shabbos. Says the Gemara, V'chein Omar Rava. Gemara now says that similarly Rava also ascribed to the opinion of Chizkiah as follows: Lo shanu ela bekupa meleya kishuin v'deluin. We're talking about a kupa in our Mishnah that is filled with long vegetables that go the entire length of the basket. And that's why he is going to be potter, because part of those vegetables are still in the Rishus HaYachid. But if this basket was filled with mustard seeds, since some of those seeds are entirely in the Rishus HaRabim, even though partial kupa, the kupa is partially in the Rishus HaYachid, it will be chayev. Obviously, he holds like Chizkiah that a eged kli, the connection to its Rishus HaYachid, is not going to be considered a connection, whereby we do have a malach of hoitzav, a transferring from one Rishus to another Rishus, because the seeds are entirely in Rishus HaRabim. Abaye argues, and he holds like Rabbi Yochanan, afilu malei chardal potter, even if the entire basket is filled with mustard seeds, it would still be potter, because again, part of the kli of the basket is still in the Rishus HaYachid. Alma kisover eged kli shmei eged. Obviously, Abai ascribes the opinion again of Rabbi Yochanan that the connection of the kli that is still inside the Rishus HaYachid is considered to be a connection. Therefore, it's not considered to be a malach of hoitzah here. Says the Gemara, Kam Abai b'shitase de Rava, Kam Rava b'shitase de Abai. They switched opinions. Rava got up and he said like the opinion of Abai. That means he changed his opinion to then follow that of which Abai had said. And Abai actually did switch his opinion to the opinion of Rava. Ask the Gemara. The Gemara says, "V'rami da Abai Abai, v'rami da Rava Rava," whereby we're left with a kasha Abai on Abai and a kasha on Rava, as it says in the following: Diitmar hamoitzi peiros l'rishus harabim. It says that a person takes out peiros to the rishus harabim. Abai omar biyad chayev. Abai said if it's in his hands, that he's bringing it to the Rishus HaRabim, even though his body is still in the Rishus HaYachid, but he brings it to the Rishus HaRabim with his hands, he's going to be chayiv. If it's, however, bikli, he's going to be potter. Because over here, we say that the kli has a connection to the Rishus HaYachid. So therefore, here it states that Abaye holds that the Ogid, kli shmei Ogid. V'rova Omar biyad potter. Over here, Rava says, however, that if he's going to go out biyad, he's going to then take it out the peiros, holding it in his hands, he will be potter. Bekli chayiv, even though the kli still has a connection to that which is inside the reshus hayachid, and he says chayiv. So here he says that the kli, eged kli, is shmei eged. So the Gemara says, you see, that's a reversal, that each one is saying the opposite of what they had said that they are holding now. To which the Gemara answers, ipuch, you have to then switch around their shitas that was just quoted over here, and indeed each one holds, as they stated before, like the other one. The Gemara now asks a question on the last quotation that we said, that in the case where somebody who is going to then come out, be moitzi peiros, to the Reshus HaRabim. So Abaye had said, if it's biyad, if he takes it, even though he's standing in the Reshus HaYachid, and he extends his hand in the Reshus HaRabim with those peiros, he will be chayiv. So the Gemara asks, v'hatnan, but it says in the first Mishnah in the Masechta, poshat bal habayis, the bal habayis who's standing in the Reshus HaYachid, he extends his hand as yadoi lachutz, outside in the Reshus HaRabim, v'notal ha'ani mitoicha, and the ani who's standing in the Reshus HaRabim, he then takes from that hand of the balabayas, or that the ani puts his hand inside the Reshus HaYachid, and he puts it into the hand of the balabayas. Here it says in the Mishnah, Shneim Peturim. So the Gemara is asking a question: how can it be in the case of Abaye that when a person moitzi peiros l'Reshus HaRabim and he's standing in the Reshus HaYachid with his hand in the Reshus HaRabim, there he will be chayiv? Over here in our Mishnah says that when the balabayis who's standing in the Reshus HaYachid extends his hand to the Reshus HaRabim, then it says that it's going to be potter when the ani takes it from his hand. Why is that so? It should be chayiv. Answers the Gemara, Hasam lamala migimel, hacha lamata migimel. Over there, referring to the Mishnah in the beginning of the Masechta, there when it says he's going to be potter is because the hand is above gimel, which means to say there was never a hanacha. The item never rested, and then the ani took it from the hand of the balabayas. So therefore they're potter. Whereas, this case over here of Abaye is talking about when his toich gimel tfachim from the ground, where we say lavud, and therefore it's considered to be noch on the ground, whereby he is chayiv.